Welcome to the third edition of Weather and Climate Chat for this semester, September 12th, 2016, with Monsoon Mike Regensberger and Dr. Michael Davis. Dr. Davis, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good today.
Good. We just got over a pretty intense heat spell for early September. Not all that unusual for what's been happening past Septembers, which has generally averaged warmer than normal, but just going down some of our high temperatures and what I've been doing with and that's a totally other little side project that we're doing. If you've been following along our podcast, the AccuWeather 90-day forecast, what I've been doing is taking since we don't really have a weather station here on campus yet, but you're working on that, I know.
Yes.
I've been taking the forecast for Kutztown and then comparing it to the high temperature in Allentown and Reading, since that's our two nearest official weather stations, and then averaging Allentown and Reading. So, for example, if Allentown one day was 86 and Reading was 88, I'm saying that the high in Kutztown that week was that day was 87. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's a pretty fair thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking pretty much the average temperature between the two and assuming that there's no temperature variations between these 2 points, which is a pretty big assumption.
Yeah, but it's probably the best we can do at this
But
point.
for our intents and purposes, for how we're essentially assessing this 9-day forecast, I think it works. And
since we're kind of like smack dab in the middle of both airports, we're about 18 miles from Lehigh Valley and 18 miles from Reading, so it's probably the closest as we're going to get, short of our own weather station.
For this non-scientific study,
that
this is good enough.
So, well, first of all, before we do our non-scientific study, and we'll push that off for a second, and we'll actually talk about the past week's weather. September 7th, which was last Wednesday, the actual temperature average between the two cities, 91. Thursday, 95. Friday, 93. Saturday, 95. That's pretty darn toasty for the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th of September.
Correct. That is very unseasonably warm temperatures, and the forecast from AccuWeather pretty much tanked on those days. But that's to be expected, especially if you're dealing with extreme heat or potentially extreme cold, if we're going to take the flip side of the coin.
And we'll do a shout out to the sesquicentennial. I always have a hard time saying that word. I'm sure everybody else does. The parade was this past Saturday. KUR was in it. I and my students walked in front of a 1960 Ford Falcon, which was driven by one of our former student members who restored that beautiful car. And we walked a full mile in, at that point it wasn't quite 95 yet, but it was closing in on 90. So it was pretty, I was tired after that.
Yeah, I'd imagine the temperatures and the moisture were pretty much getting to a lot of the parade goers.
It's a shame, I was going to say it's a shame it didn't happen yesterday, but then yesterday was kind of windy, and that might have been bad for floats and people carrying banners, so... Yeah,
and also when you get windy days, it tends to be a little bit on the cooler side because of the mixing that's generated by the wind. So you get turbulent mixing, essentially taking the hot air and the cold air and mixing them together and pretty much moderating it.
So last week's spell was pretty much an official heat wave, because heat wave is 3 or more days of 90 plus, and we easily did that. It was 4 days, and actually just short of being 5 days, because the September 6th was 89 between the two cities. So 4 or 5, you can argue over the details. What caused us to have a 4-day heat wave in September, Dr. Davis?
We pretty much had a high-pressure system that didn't really want to move too much and stood pretty much off the eastern coast of the U.S. and pumped all that warm, moist air up, affected our region.
One thing that I've noticed, and we had, of course, a cold front, fairly strong cold front move through Saturday night. Usually, though, you would equate when a cold front comes through and we're crushing temperatures from 95 all the way down to yesterday's beautiful high of only 83 degrees, you would have thought that you would have seen some kind of shower activity. But one thing I've noticed of late, it's been really tough to squeeze much moisture out of the atmosphere. And I was looking at radar on Saturday ahead of the cold front, and there was a nice line of rain and thunderstorms out near Pittsburgh. But by the time that got to us overnight, Saturday into Sunday, nary a drop. So
pretty much what you get there is the mountain influence kind of squeezes out the moisture as it goes up all the ridges and valleys of the Appalachians. So by the time it gets to us, the moisture is pretty much sucked dry. And secondly, it's also occurring at nighttime when you don't have the solar heating going on during the day to give that extra push that it might need for uplift. So by the time the front actually got here, it's pretty much moisture starved, and we didn't get that much precipitation.
Yeah. In fact, some areas I think it was totally dry. I don't think I received anything at home.
I do remember looking at the radar, like with you, when it was going
looked pretty
across
impressive, yeah.
Ohio, because I was watching the Ohio State game, obviously, and
yeah.
I saw the line going all the way from Cleveland down to Cincinnati, and you had a severe thunderstorm watch pretty much the entire state.
And even
impressive squall line.
Western Pennsylvania up to about maybe the Altoona State College area had some storms, but by the time it got here, pretty much squat.
Yep, and that's probably because of the orographic effect.
Right. So that cold front came through. Yesterday was a total 180 from the day prior. Felt great. Lower humidity. We had a breeze going, so it felt nice. High was only 83 degrees, which was pretty accurate for what AccuWeather was going with 14 days ago, so they did good that day after busting pretty badly the days prior. Next couple of days, we've got some nice cool nights. Last night we were in the 50s. Looks like another night tonight in the 50s.
The temperature's going to get pretty low for Monday night.
In fact, I saw some areas of the Poconos, sheltered valleys, all that kind of good stuff, mountaintops, 40s possible. And
tonight,
I
saw that as well.
Which is encouraging, being that I look forward to fall and hate the heat.
Well, the autumnal equinox is just over a week away now.
Yep. And then tomorrow, kind of a carbon copy of today, lots of sunshine. Maybe a little warmer tomorrow. Winds start to shift as that high pressure moves a little bit off the East Coast. Winds start to shift to the southwest, and at maybe 83, 84 tomorrow, you thinking?
Yeah, the high pressures, again, going to be responsible for that.
Okay. And then Wednesday, unfortunately, the heat is back, but this time just for one day, which is good. We might flirt with 90 on Wednesday, but you don't think we'll quite make it on 90?
I don't think we'll get to 90.
Okay.
Do you?
You and I always have our fun little debates here. You know what? For the fun of it,
That's why I tried setting you up there.
for the fun of it, I'm going to say sure. Why not? With the way that we've busted too low for every day practically for the past 2 weeks, why not? Yeah, we're going to make 90 on Wednesday. I'm going to go for it.
I think we're getting a little too late in the season, and I also think that we haven't had the stage properly set with warm air in place leading up to the day. So I'm going to say we don't get 90, but
so what
I'm
do you
going
think?
to say 88.
I was going to say you're probably going with like 88, 89. Okay. All right, well, I'll go with 90. I'll be the guy to go out on a limb and go against the good Dr. Davis.
Plus, last week I did say we're done with the 90s.
That's right. So you've got some...
I got to stay consistent here.
You've got to stay consistent. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go at 90, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll cut you a break. So say if Reading is 90 and Allentown is 88, we'll say you were good because in
we'll call it a wash.
We'll call it a wash. Yeah. All right. Well, past that front, because we have another front coming through on Wednesday afternoon, evening, night. That one also looks like it could lean fairly dry as well too.
It very well could.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really see that much in the way of precipitation that the models are suggesting at this point. So I'm not entirely certain we're going to get any sort of significant precipitation, which we definitely need at this point.
Now, the air that comes in behind that front is even a touch cooler than the air that we've got now. I see highs Thursday especially. National Weather Service, I believe, what are they going with?
I thought I saw 74.
Yeah, I think I might have even seen 73, I thought. Well, either way, 73, 74, that's probably one of the coolest highs that we've had in a long time in this long, hot summer.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the 70s
73
since April, May, sometime around then.
National Weather Service is agreeing with you. Kutztown on Wednesday, 89 degrees. So they're missing it by 1 degree. 20% chance of a shower or thunderstorm Wednesday night. 20% chance is not much. And they're very descriptive about the timing, too, between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. So they're thinking that front comes through around that time.
Pretty much the same time as the front on Saturday.
Pretty much. And then Thursday, 73 degrees for a high. Thursday night, Kutztown, 50 degrees. So definitely the cooler valleys north of here are going to be into the 40s Thursday night, it looks like.
And we'll see if we have to contend with any fog, too.
Yeah, that's true, too. Friday, 75, pretty much the same, a little warmer. Saturday, it looks like we start to get that return flow going a little bit again. 79, I've seen some sources going with 80, 81 maybe for Saturday. Mm-hmm. And then it looks like another front comes through Sunday. That front, I haven't studied that one too much, but that one looks like it could potentially give us a little more widespread showers. I'm not sure why that is.
But we just need some more refinement in the models.
Yeah.
But it could just be grabbing some residual moisture from pretty much the Atlantic Ocean. If you have like winds out of the east, be pretty much blocked by the Appalachians and kind of pooling up on the eastern side of the mountains.
And as you've said, we do need the rain, and we really are rain starved. We really haven't had much, so we can definitely use any rain that we do get on Sunday or whenever that would be.
I believe Allentown is about 3.5 inches below normal for the year.
Okay.
And Redding's about 4.5 inches below normal for the year.
So is that an official drought at this point, or are we just kind of like in a drought watch, would you say? I know some counties are under a drought advisory. I forget the exact word.
I haven't seen anything going around about drought advisory or any sort.
I thought I saw something, but you might be right, yep.
I haven't heard anything at least widespread.
Okay. I know some maybe it was just like conserve water sort of thing. I thought that I had seen something. But either way, folks, short of the details, okay, this was back on August 2nd. Pennsylvania DEP issued drought watch for 34 Pennsylvania counties. But that was, I'm not sure if that included our area or not. Well, either way, try to conserve water, because my phone's taking forever to load that article. Try to conserve water as much as possible, and hopefully maybe as we get into October.
Even if we don't have one,
yeah,
it's still a good idea to start conserving water because the areas around here are pretty parched.
Okay, yeah, this was...
It wouldn't surprise me if we were.
August 2nd, 2016, the DEP had a drought watch for 34 Pennsylvania counties, which included Berks, Lebanon, Dauphin, Perry were the nearest counties. Schuylkill doesn't look like it was in there, so that's interesting that the county just to our north was not, but this one is.
Now, some of the recent climate trends have been showing that south central Pennsylvania has been warming the most.
Okay, so that could be why. That would make sense.
That could be where we're seeing it.
That could make sense.
And I recently got a publication looking at south central Pennsylvania, and they're actually getting less in the way of heavy precipitation events.
Interesting. Why is that?
I'm contributing it more toward a continental influence where you're further inland. You have more of the orographic effects that goes along with that to essentially shelter from moving in air masses, so advecting more moisture in. But we could talk about that another day. Yeah,
forward that to me. I'd be interested to read that. That sounds interesting. And this is something we didn't, and it's funny that you say that because... Okay, well, we really didn't have a topic today, but I'm just going to throw this out there, and we didn't even prepare for this off the air, but you just made me think of something that I had totally forgot about before going on the air. You have certain effects of, topography and where mountains are and hills and stuff. One thing that I noticed, and it's really hilarious how this happened because I had never shared this observation that I made with anybody else until Stormwatch Sal, my associate, texted me one night after he had come over to our house and we had a barbecue and him and his girlfriend were heading home. And he texted me this message and I'm like, oh my gosh, you noticed the same thing. There's one little stretch 6 miles north of here between Lenhartsville and the Kutztown Crummsville exit where if you're driving along I-78, and I've confirmed this with 2 different cars, 2 different thermometers, and now my buddy Sal, his car thermometer as well too, did the same exact thing. We've noticed it in the middle of summer, and we've noticed it in the middle of winter, that one stretch there is always about 3 to 4 degrees cooler than east of that exit and west of that exit. In the summer, if it's 95 degrees approaching there, you'll get to those 2 exits there, and it'll be about 88. In the wintertime, one time they had like beautiful ice crystals along that stretch of the trees, and then you got past there and everything was melted. Is there something to what he and I are observing? Is it possible that one little area is like a cool pocket of sorts?
It very well could be. You do get these kind of like isolated, cooler pockets of air time to time in this topographic region, especially in mountainous or hilly areas where you're going to have sharp changes in elevation where essentially the cold air just pools up down at the bottom of the valley, or perhaps it could be sheltered as well, like shaded, so the sunlight doesn't really reach into there. Perhaps it goes the highway north of the hill. So it's
there actually
always
is a hill there.
The cooler side of the hill rather than the sunlit side, which is going to be more warmer temperatures.
Because we've noticed that at night. We've noticed it during the day. So sunlight really wouldn't have much play at night, but it just seems pretty... Well, I guess it could have a little bit of a play because I guess if the sun's not hitting there much during the day, then it's less heat to lose at night. So, it very
well could.
Yeah. we just found that really interesting how both he and I, without even telling each other about this observation, it was just sort of one of those things like, oh my gosh, I noticed that too, and I never told you that. That one stretch there, Lenhartsville to Crumsville, always about 4 degrees cooler than everywhere else.
So
I might be looking to buy.
Possible.
I might be looking to buy real estate there since I love cool air.
Have the highway going right.
Yeah,
by, right?
get that 4 extra degrees off. Okay, so that's good. One thing that we've noticed as we wrap this edition up is a couple of weeks ago, it looks like the tropics were really cooking out there, and there was lots of things to watch. We had Hermine, we had other things to watch, but now it's kind of gone.
It's pretty quiet out there right now. We have a couple of waves out in the Atlantic, but nothing like what we had a few weeks ago when we had Hermine and Gaston and another tropical wave. I think Tropical Depression 8, that's what it was, sitting off the Carolina coast.
Now, climatologically, historically, we're just about at the peak of hurricane season.
Correct.
The peak is September 10th, right?
Yeah, it's September 10th, September 11th, around that time.
So we're right there, and there's really nothing out there to watch.
At this point, no.
Is that going to change, you think?
I think it will. We still have several months to go until the end of hurricane season, which typically ends around the end of November, sometimes goes into December, depends on the warmth. But we've also had what we've seen a drought in Category 5 hurricanes, which are used on the Saffir-Simpson scale for how we rate actual intensity of hurricanes based on wind speed. We haven't had a Cat 5, as they're sometimes called by meteorologists, in the Atlantic since 2007 with Hurricane Felix.
Now, that's interesting because we've talked about climate change and making potentially some more storms, but that really hasn't held true, at least for the severity of hurricanes, and that's a good thing. I mean, at least we haven't had any damaging hurricanes. Is there a reason you think that we've had a slight drought of Cat 5 hurricanes lately, or just a normal occurrence of events?
There's a lot of things that need to come together for a Cat 5 to actually occur. Like you need really warm water, you need very little in terms of wind shear, as it's called, with the jet stream kind of not interacting with the whole system itself. You need a lot of moisture. You need generally sufficient depth of water as well, usually about 50 meters or so deep. So those conditions you need to make sure you have them. Otherwise, you're not going to have a very good environment for hurricanes to form. Plus, you have the land, the islands that might be essentially cutting off the moisture and energy that's needed for the storm.
Now, we're up to letter H. I don't think there's been an I storm yet in the Atlantic or the Gulf.
Ian would be the next one.
Ian's the next one, okay. Is that about fairly average for where we should be? What is that, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, 8 storms? Is that a fairly about average for this time of year?
I would probably say we are about on average. Might be a little bit below.
Okay.
But we're just about on average.
I remember that one year, what was it, about 4 or 5 years ago, and we made it all through the alphabet and then had to go to the Greek alphabet? Or
that was 2005.
Okay, so that was longer than I thought, yeah.
That was with Katrina, Rita,
yes.
Wilma.
That was a wild year.
Yeah, we had a lot of activity in the tropics that year-round.
So, fortunately, nothing like that this year. But so we still have a long way to go, and we just have to look back at some storms in years past. And October can still be a pretty active month, even early November is possible.
And we haven't really had any Category 4s for a long time either. The most recent one, though, did occur last year with Hurricane Joaquin, when it looked like for a time that it was going to be
right
visiting
up to
us.
Yeah, that was scary there. You and I were preparing like our emergency plans, and then Joaquin decided to not do that route.
They decided to go out to the Atlantic. Yeah. I think a front came in and pushed it out.
Yeah, but a couple of those models there was pretty scary because it had to come in like right off the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah, you and I were very concerned. I remember that last year.
That would have been pretty catastrophic for areas like Washington, Baltimore, up into central Pennsylvania, but Joaquin had different plans, which was good.
Yes, we didn't have to contend with that. We still have Sandy kind of fresh in our minds.
Well, Sandy, yeah, but that technically wasn't a hurricane. What was that, an extratropical cyclone or post-tropical cyclone? But for all intents and purposes, it was a pretty good storm.
Mm-hmm. So. And last week was also the anniversary of the 1900 Galveston hurricane, which still remains the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history.
Yep. And, of course, we know that forecasting methods were very primitive back then, and there really wasn't a whole lot to go off of that the storm was coming, so that's why there was so much loss of life. Now we have wonderful science and technology which helps us prevent that kind of stuff from happening. Does anybody know exactly, it was 116 years ago, and short of the models and stuff, is there a definitive idea of how strong that hurricane really was? Was that a Cat 3, 4, 5?
It was a Cat 4.
It was a 4, okay.
Or what would have been, because there's only been 3 Category 5 hurricanes to ever strike the U.S. One was, the most recent one was Andrew. Then before that, it was 1969 with Camille, and then 1936 with the Labor Day hurricane.
That's right. Yep.
And the Keys down in Florida.
Yep.
Those are the only 3. Because Katrina did go to a Cat 4 shortly before landfall.
Right, and the Andrew thing is interesting because wasn't that thought for many years to be a Cat 4, but it was only in recent years that they restudied it and upgraded it that it was really a Cat 5?
I've always known it to be a Cat 5, but it wouldn't surprise me there, too, because it was kind of right on the border, I remember, for a while of it being Cat 4 and Cat 5, because that was one of the things that got me into meteorology, was watching the Weather Channel back in 1992 when Andrew occurred, and you had the late, great John Hope as the...
good old John.
as the hurricane expert, and you had Jim Cantori when he had hair. Talking about the storm.
I remember John, yes. He's at in the Hurricane Forecasting Center in the sky, I guess you could say now. But he was a good guy, and I remember that too. But yeah, I'll have to double check that. But I'm pretty sure that it was one of those things that after they did their final meetings and their analyses and whatever, they changed it then, because I think for a couple weeks there, they were saying it was a Category 4. And then they were like, after they analyzed the damage, and they're like, oh no, that was a Cat 5. So.
And then Andrew later on made a secondary landfall right around Louisiana and Mississippi.
But that landfall wasn't quite as destructive.
Not as destructive,
no. But Louisiana and Mississippi, unfortunately, got their due in 2005 with Katrina. So, yeah, pretty scary.
Completely leveled the town of Homestead. Florida,
yes.
Because I remember that because my favorite baseball team, the Cleveland Indians, used to have their spring training down in Homestead, and their whole facility was completely destroyed by Andrew.
I remember that. Yeah, that was one of the first hurricanes that really got me into it, too. But I'm also old enough to remember, going back even a few more years, 88 or 9, Hugo. Remember Hugo?
Yeah, Hugo is 89.
89, okay. And that was South Carolina, like Charleston, South Carolina.
Gilbert was 88, and that was a big one, too.
Okay, Well, fortunately, we haven't had anything like that recently, but we still got a long way to go. Like I said, we're just at the peak right now, and we'll see where the rest of September and October has us.
We'll find out.
All right. Well, Dr. Michael Davis, thanks so much for joining us. Just to recap once again, nice weather the next few days, a little hot on Wednesday, but cooling down again. I'm just looking at AccuWeather's forecast for... just seeing if they're going to bust. Yeah, unfortunately, they're going to bust, I think, pretty badly on this Wednesday, because on August 29th, they had this Wednesday being a high of 81. So
yeah, I think they're going to
even
bust
going
there.
with your conservative 88 degrees, that's a pretty bad bust. So
yeah, I would agree.
Oh, well, we'll see if they get better in the fall when we get past all this heat. All right, Dr. Davis, we will see you again next week.
Sounds good.
All right.